The WTA is in full, irreversible meltdown mode. Steve Simon and the corrupt executives running women's tennis are watching their billion-dollar empire crumble directly to the ground. They tried to permanently silence 18-year-old Mirra Andreeva, but she just exposed their entire rigged system on live television. March 2026 at Indian Wells was supposed to be a standard, highly profitable tournament for the board. Mirra steps onto the blistering hardcourt, fully prepared to face Katerina Siniakova, but the undeniable reality is this is not a normal professional tennis match. This is a public execution orchestrated directly by the WTA boardroom. The executives deliberately set a massive, inescapable trap for the teenage star to utterly destroy her momentum. They assigned specific umpires who were under strict, confirmed orders to target her every single move. The establishment uses minor code violations as psychological weapons against young, independent players. They want to break the young hero in front of the entire world to prove they have absolute, total control. And during the crucial second set, their calculated, vicious plan goes into full effect. Siniakova starts complaining about the speed of Mirra's serves to intentionally disrupt her natural rhythm. This is a classic manipulative delay tactic used to rattle inexperienced opponents on the court. But instead of remaining neutral, the chair umpire immediately and blatantly sides against Mirra. The umpire begins issuing absurd warnings and completely dictating the pace of the young star's game. This is a deliberate, targeted procedural failure designed to mentally derail the rising champion. The umpire actively ignores the official rulebook to accommodate the veteran player's calculated complaints. Mirra is forced to wait, losing her physical warmth and her sharp mental edge. The corrupt executives in the VIP boxes watch with glee as the trap slowly tightens around her. The absolute pressure cooker finally explodes when Mirra misses a crucial, match-defining breakpoint. In a moment of sheer, agonizing frustration, Mirra punches her own thigh repeatedly. The broadcasters instantly frame her as an emotionally unstable child throwing a massive tantrum, but what the official commentary refuses to tell you is exactly why a teenager is driven to physical self-harm. The documents prove that the WTA's grueling, abusive schedule strips players of sleep, physical recovery, and basic human dignity. Mirra is completely breaking down under the crushing weight of a multi-million-dollar corporation resting entirely on her shoulders. She is fighting a massive corporate machine entirely alone. She loses the second set tiebreaker, and the sheer, undeniable injustice of the situation completely boils over. She violently smashes her racket into the hardcourt, shattering the frame into a dozen pieces. The umpire immediately slaps her with a harsh, humiliating code violation. This is exactly what the corrupt executives want to happen on their courts. They want the broadcast to paint her as an out-of-control villain so they can instantly justify controlling her. They want to crush her independent spirit so she remains entirely compliant, completely silent, and highly profitable. But Mirra fiercely fights back against their twisted, relentless manipulation. She absolutely refuses to be a silent victim in their sick, greedy corporate game. After the grueling match ends, she walks off the court, looks directly at the umpire's chair, and shouts, "Fuck you all." The internal PR team immediately spins this as a disgraceful, arrogant outburst. They intentionally leak negative statements to the press, demanding she be heavily fined by the tour. But the reality of the situation is completely and entirely different from the corporate narrative. Mirra is speaking directly to the corporate suits sitting high up in the VIP boxes. She is rejecting the abusive, fundamentally broken system that tried to break her for their own financial gain. And the absolute truth is, this is not the first time the WTA has actively tried to ruin her young career. Let's rewind the tape to the prestigious Wimbledon tournament in the summer of 2023. Mirra is just 16 years old, playing on the biggest, most intimidating stage in the entire world. She is completely dominating her highly anticipated match against Madison Keys. The executives are absolutely terrified of her rapid, completely unstoppable success. They know a 16-year-old independent star will completely threaten their total control over the professional tour. So they order the tournament officials to intervene and artificially stop her massive momentum. Late in the crucial third set of the match, Mirra slips on the slick, worn-out grass surface. She falls forward awkwardly and her racket hits the ground to brace her sudden physical impact. It is a clear, undeniable accident confirmed by every single video replay from the broadcast. But the chair umpire issues a devastating, completely unwarranted point penalty for racket abuse anyway. This horrific, calculated call hands the match point directly to her shocked opponent. The WTA executives orchestrated this exact procedural failure to artificially stop her meteoric rise up the rankings. Mirra completely refuses to shake the corrupt umpire's hand after the match officially concludes. She is absolutely right to deny them that basic respect after being so blatantly and publicly robbed. Every single time Mirra Andreeva steps onto a tennis court, she is fighting a fundamentally rigged game. The establishment uses the official rulebook as a blunt financial weapon against her. They fine her, they heavily penalize her, and they try to actively humiliate her at every single turn. They want to paint her as a spoiled diva to protect their own fragile, unearned reputations. They use these massive fines as a disgusting secondary revenue stream for their bloated corporate salaries. They steal her hard-earned prize money to directly fund their luxury travel and lavish executive bonuses. It is a highly organized financial shakedown disguised as professional sports regulation. The financial realities of the WTA Tour are a completely guarded corporate secret. The executives flatly refuse to publicly disclose exactly where the tournament revenues actually go. But the leaked documents prove a sickening, undeniable truth about the tour's underlying financial structure. And while teenage players are forced to pay for their own international flights, hotels, and coaching staff out of pocket, the corrupt executives are flying on private jets, funded entirely by the players' exhausting physical labor. It's a massive, unregulated wealth transfer from the young athletes directly to the aging boardroom. Mirra Andreeva realized this massive financial scam the exact moment she turned professional. She saw her hard-earned prize money instantly vanish into mandatory tour fees, operational taxes, and arbitrary fines. The system is intentionally designed to keep players living paycheck to paycheck, so they remain completely obedient. If a player complains about the grueling travel schedule or the massive expenses, the WTA instantly threatens to pull their credentials. They use the constant fear of absolute bankruptcy to keep the entire locker room completely silent. But Mirra is completely fearless, and she is openly threatening their entire broken financial model. The chair umpires are not independent, neutral observers of the game, as the WTA claims. They are direct, paid employees of the corrupt WTA executives sitting in the boardroom. They receive their performance reviews, their bonuses, and their tournament assignments directly from Steve Simon's office. If an umpire wants to officiate a prestigious Grand Slam final, they must strictly follow the corporate orders. The documents prove that umpires are actively rewarded for heavily penalizing outspoken, independent players like Mirra. It's a completely rigged, biased justice system operating right out in the open. When Mirra smashed her racket at Indian Wells, the umpire did not see a frustrated, exhausted teenager. The umpire saw a perfect, golden opportunity to secure a massive promotion from the greedy executives. They eagerly issued the code violation because they knew exactly what the boardroom wanted to see on television. This deep, systemic corruption goes all the way down to the line judges and the local tournament directors. Everyone is completely terrified of losing their lucrative jobs, so they gladly participate in the ongoing abuse. But Mirra's absolute refusal to back down is causing a massive chain reaction of sheer corporate panic. What happened next in the corporate boardroom was even more shocking than the rigged matches. The executives finally realized they can't actually beat Mirra on the tennis court. Her natural talent is entirely undeniable, and her independence is a massive threat to their operation. So they take the battle into the dark, hidden corners of the WTA headquarters. They fully and aggressively weaponize the official age eligibility rule. The WTA publicly claims this specific rule protects young players from burning out early in their professional careers. That is a calculated, absolute, and proven lie manufactured by their PR department. The documents prove the rule is specifically designed to restrict teenagers from playing high-paying, independent tournaments. It severely limits the exact number of professional events any player under 18 can actually enter. This is not about physical protection. It is entirely about total, absolute financial control. By strictly limiting her schedule, Steve Simon and the executives brutally throttle Mirra's earning potential. They intentionally force her into complete financial submission before she can build her own wealth. They want her desperate for their approved wildcards and their corporate-backed sponsorships. They use the complex, deeply confusing rulebook to keep young prodigies locked in a permanent financial cage. They want to dictate exactly when, exactly where, and exactly how she makes her money. If she wants to play a major tournament, she has to literally beg the executives for special permission. This gives the boardroom ultimate, unchecked leverage over her entire life and career trajectory. But Mirra bravely refuses to play their twisted, manipulative game. She completely bypasses their bureaucratic traps, maximizes her incredibly limited schedule, and dominates the tour anyway. She shatters their financial control by winning major titles on her own terms, completely independent of their rigged system. The executives instantly panic when they realize they have completely lost their leverage over her. They quickly realize they are dealing with a hero who cannot be bought, bullied, or intimidated into submission. So they escalate their vicious attacks by forcing her into a blatant physical scheduling nightmare. The reality is, the WTA deliberately overloads players with mandatory events across impossible, chaotic time zones. Steve Simon and his cronies sit in climate-controlled luxury suites, sipping highly expensive champagne. Meanwhile, teenagers are literally forced to play grueling 3-hour physical matches at 2 in the morning. They mandate these late-night, physically destructive schedules solely to satisfy greedy television broadcasters. They gladly and willingly sacrifice player health and physical safety for a significantly larger corporate payout. Because of this exact scheduling abuse, players are getting seriously injured at record rates across the entire tour. The locker rooms are toxic, dangerous environments built entirely on fear, silence, and intimidation. Players are absolutely terrified to speak out because the WTA will immediately target their hard-earned ranking points. The executives will stick them on the worst outer courts with the worst umpires at the absolute worst times. It is a systemic, highly organized mafia operation running under the legal guise of a sports league. But Mirra Andreeva is the only player brave enough to finally and completely shatter the illusion. Her smashed rackets are not signs of a bad attitude or a weak, fragile mentality. They are the undeniable, physical evidence of a fundamentally broken, highly abusive corporate system. Every broken frame is a direct, physical rebellion against Steve Simon's ruthless, unchecked dictatorship over the sport. The executives truly think they can just fine her into strict, silent, and absolute obedience. They slap her with massive, unprecedented financial penalties for her Indian Wells comments. They desperately try to paint her as emotionally unstable to scare away her biggest, most lucrative corporate sponsors. They plant fake, heavily edited stories in the media to destroy her marketability and ruin her global image. But their vicious, calculated accusations are completely falling apart in real time. Major tennis figures are finally looking at the raw footage and realizing Mirra is the undeniable targeted victim. They see the umpires actively smirking as they hand down devastating match-ending penalties. They see the sheer physical exhaustion in her eyes, caused directly by the executive's greedy scheduling demands. The entire sports industry is rapidly and permanently distancing itself from the toxic, failing WTA leadership. Major global corporate sponsors are quietly pulling their massive funding from the tour's upcoming premier events. Broadcasters are aggressively questioning the bizarre, blatantly biased umpiring decisions broadcast on their own networks. The reality is, the executives are facing a massive, unprecedented legal and financial defeat. Their blatant, undeniable manipulation of the tour schedule is completely collapsing right in front of them in the boardroom. The tour's finances are bleeding out drastically faster than they can secure new corporate loans to cover their massive debts. The corporate sponsors are actively terminating their massive multi-year broadcast contracts without any warning. The financial documents prove that the WTA is actively losing millions of dollars in revenue every single week. The executives are staring directly at an absolute, undeniable financial catastrophe. The internal board meetings are absolutely flooded with panic, aggressive finger-pointing, and sudden, unexplained resignations. The executives are scrambling in a total panic to cover up their massive, unforgivable mess. They launch desperate, pathetic PR campaigns to save their own high-paying executive jobs. They issue fake, heavily edited public statements claiming they always prioritize player mental and physical health. Meanwhile, they are actively and knowingly destroying the mental health of their absolute brightest young star. It is a sickening, transparent display of corporate hypocrisy that the entire industry can finally see. The undeniable reality is the WTA desperately and fundamentally needs Mirra Andreeva for their own basic survival. Their plummeting television ratings and completely dismal ticket sales rely entirely on her electrifying, highly anticipated matches. No one is paying top dollar to watch Steve Simon give a boring corporate press conference. The broadcasters are paying exclusively to see the raw, unfiltered passion of a teenage phenomenon fighting against the absolute odds. Yet the executives treat her like a completely disposable, worthless, and easily replaceable corporate asset. They push her to the absolute physical brink of exhaustion and then brutally punish her for finally reacting to the abuse. They squeeze every last drop of financial profit from her massive talent and offer absolutely zero protection in return. But the tide has permanently and irreversibly turned against the corrupt tennis establishment. The young hero is firmly standing her ground against the ruthless billion-dollar corporate machine. She is flatly refusing to ever apologize for feeling human emotions in a deeply inhuman, entirely sterile system. She knows that every single time she speaks the absolute truth, the executives lose another massive ounce of their power. The boardroom is completely out of ideas, out of money, and entirely out of ammunition. The executives are now hopelessly trapped in a massive, inescapable nightmare of their own direct making. They cannot suspend her without immediately losing their massive multi-million-dollar television broadcast deals. They cannot control her without looking like absolute, unhinged tyrants to the global sports industry. They are completely paralyzed by the sheer, undeniable force of her absolute authenticity and bravery. Every single desperate move they make only proves Mirra's point even further to the global audience. They try to deploy their expensive PR teams to plant negative, slanderous stories in the global press, but the sponsors easily see right through the calculated lies and stand firmly behind the teenage star. The walls are rapidly and violently closing in on the greedy suits who completely ruined the sport for their own gain. Steve Simon and his corrupt cabinet are in total, irreversible, and highly publicized freefall.
Their once pristine, carefully managed reputations are permanently stained by this catastrophic, career-ending financial scandal. They gladly and willingly sacrificed the absolute integrity of the sport for a quick executive paycheck, and now the massive bill they accumulated is coming back to destroy their entire operation. Mirra Andreeva is stronger, smarter, and significantly more resilient than ever before. She single-handedly exposed the deep, undeniable rot at the very core of women's professional tennis. She proved to the entire industry that the absolute truth always comes out eventually. It does not matter how many massive financial fines they issue or how many outright lies they broadcast on television. The executives are rapidly losing their unchecked power, their stolen money, and their entire professional legacy. The entire tennis world finally sees them for the pathetic, manipulative frauds they truly are. Steve Simon and they thought they'd destroy Mirra, but they only destroyed themselves.